I'm so excited to have my guest, Jessica Alana, here today. Welcome, Jessica.
Hi, Dr. Lulu. How are you?
I'm so good. We're having some rain here, which is really great for Asheville, and it's preparing us for a wonderful winter of snow. So I can't wait.
Nice. I'm in Dubai. It's just the desert here.
No, no rain today for you.
No rain today,
No
unless
rain.
they do unless they do the cloud seeding.
Oh, what's that?
They do cloud seeding, so they like purposefully put clouds into the sky to make it rain.
Wow,
Yeah, it's some
that's
sort
so
of like
cool.
weather modification.
I love technology. That's fascinating. I didn't know that. Before we dive deep into our show, which we're going to be talking all about biohacking and the brain and how to triumph tragedy, I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about yourself and introduce you to the audience so they can get to know you a little bit better.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
We met at the Biohacker Summit in Amsterdam.
Yes, we did.
We met upstairs in the VIP table, and it was quite a coincidence, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Jessica, and I'm a scientist, and I have a degree in biomedicine. I'm a biohacking fanatic. I know all things biohacking. I love biohacking. I love regenerative medicine. But really, my story begins with mental health. So I lost my mum in
Mm,
2019, very tragically to suicide. And I'm in the process of building what I call the Remainders Club,
mm.
which is a story about tragedy to triumph. And I'm really going to really embark on an expedition into learning about the suicide and really the PTSD of when you lose someone to suicide. So I'm just building that community right now. And I'm using my science and my biohacking and all of my knowledge and experience and emotion to help other people feel seen and heard.
I love that. And that's so powerful and so needed. I work a lot with a veteran community, and PTSD and suicide is rampant through that community. And it's so heartbreaking. And I think it's so needed to, and we're going to talk about that, about the aspect of our current medical model, which is failing us when it comes to suicide, PTSD, and how to even process and deal with grief.
Yeah, the medical system, I don't know what it's like in the US, but the UK medical system completely failed my mother.
Mm, yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. That's
Gross misnegligence.
It's not how it, yeah, it's not good here in the United States either. And I think in the whole world, they just don't have they're coming at it from a different perspective, I think, which we're going to dive into today. Like, why is it not addressed in a way for healing, right? And what happens when you have that grief and loss in your family and how to process it. It's such a tragedy. But I think I love the work that you're doing, and it's so important and so needed. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I'm at like 0.1%. You know what I plan to do? I'm still building out everything.
Right.
The intention is there, the correct intention. So yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really happy.
Yeah, intention is all about the building the model, right? It does take time and energy, but the intention is that's what makes it. That's when we have the love and the passion and the intention behind it, that's what people can feel, and it's so needed. And when we're talking about, let's talk about biohacking as a way for us to set some foundations today for people that are tuning in and they're like, what is biohacking? Can you explain what that is in your own words and lay a little bit of that foundation for our listeners?
Sure. So biohacking is basically another term for health optimization, but it's a niche of health optimization which uses next generation commercial biotech in the home. And these range from large modalities, such as hyperbaric oxygen machines, or even just smaller modalities, like a molecular hydrogen water bottle, or even an accessory, such as a my apologies, blue light blocking glasses, you know?
Yes, or red light therapy. I think you were getting those
Yes,
two. Yes.
yeah, red light therapy, blue light blocking glasses.
Yes.
Yeah, infinite lights.
Infinite lights. Yes, all these different things. And so when the biohacking term came around, what was like the thought process behind it? Like for me, I can think about those two kind of words coming together, like bio, like biology. We're actually going in and like changing the function of our cells in a way to optimize them, like you mentioned.
I'm pretty sure that biohacking came from Silicon Valley, and it actually came from the community of coders and
Mm-hmm.
hackers and hackathons.
The
And I'm pretty
hackathons.
sure that, yeah, I'm pretty sure these guys were doing like 18-hour shifts in like the tech bubble, the dot-com bubble. And I'm pretty sure they were looking for ways to optimize their performance in terms of their working performance. And I'm pretty sure they came up with the term. And then it just grew up. I'm certain it came from like Silicon Valley.
I think you're right. I think you're right. And I think that it's really interesting because we're in this phase on the planet right now where people want to have the best functioning body. And I think the concept of aging as is really shifting where people are like, I don't, there has been this like a bracket set around aging. Like when you become this age, XYZ happens. And I think we're really seeing that shift in how people view longevity and aging. And that's one of the reasons why I love the biohacking community and biohacking itself is that it allows us to have this doorway into the body in a way that allows us to elevate it to a new way of being.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that we have two ages, chronological age and biological age. And this is a new term, and this is a term that is only now fringing on society. Obviously, biohackers know about this, but it's all about what use is this technology if the greater society doesn't know about it.
That's so
You know
true.
what
That's
I
so
mean?
true. Yes. And that's an expansion of one piece I like about, like you mentioned, the tech world, right? We're really where we are now with the planet and technology. We're able to help people learn about tools and techniques that before might not have even been accessible because they're like, oh, before Instagram or Facebook or any of those types of things.
Yeah, I think social media is a good educational tool for the general public. We're the healthy ones. You know what I
Right.
mean? We're
Yes.
not that, like 85% of the world is sick, metabolically inflexible.
Which is
So,
crazy. 85% is such a huge piece of our population. And when you started first using biohacking techniques on your own, how did you use them in the beginning in your personal life for wellness and optimizing? And then what's been your shift like now? Is it the same like when you started for what you're using now? What's your favorite biohacking technique that you see makes the most
hmm,
shift in your current well-being?
to be honest, I used to take a lot of supplements.
Mm.
And I used to take a lot of supplements and I was like overdoing it, like cold showers and all of this stuff. Like it's got to be a mix of biohacking and ancestral living. It's got to be a mix of those things. You can't be taking like the body is in a garbage box. Like most
Right.
people haven't, yeah, like most people haven't even done a self-assessment. So they might be taking NAD. You shouldn't be taking that if you've got high cellular. It's not a garbage box. So I think the first thing that people should do is take a self-assessment. Nothing beats physical exercise. Sorry, my light is flickering.
No worries.
Sorry. It's let me go to I'm gonna go to nothing beats there you go. Nothing beats physical exercise and a good diet.
So true.
Nothing.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
so,
Meditating and just thinking positively. Like you
yeah, you're so right. Yeah, those foundations of health, when we have those, that helps us to have the house that's on all four pillars, right? Without one, if you don't have the sleep and the water and the exercise, then you're not able, it's just like the basics. And then with the other tools, you can add them in to tweak things, especially if you were mentioning like the blue light blockers, right? Where if you're having difficulty sleeping, like having a tool come in and helping you with that foundation and having to be so solid.
Yeah, I think everything can be relatively framed
Mm.
because my grandparents didn't need to use blue light blocking glasses.
No.
I must use them now. You know what I mean? So it's there's no point standing in front of a red light panel, drinking molecular hydrogen, taking methylene blue, and doing all of these things if you cannot run a mile or if you're not working out. Or if you're not, if you're eating junk food, like what is the point?
Candy bars and hyperbaric oxygen therapy, they don't kind of mix together.
You're like technically just repeating what Big Pharma does in a different framework, because Big Pharma just puts the band-aid, but you're doing the same thing with your red light, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Suppressing the underlying root cause of what might be going
So
on in
like
your
what is,
system.
yeah,
Yeah. Like what's the
yeah.
real
But
cause?
saying that, I do use molecular hydrogen. I love molecular hydrogen. I drink molecular hydrogen water every day. I do use blue light blocking glasses. I do use red light. I haven't tried methylene blue yet. I love the sauna.
Me too.
Sauna is one of my just overall, if I had to choose one, it would be sauna, and infrared sauna would just be like number one.
Mhm.
Also hyperbaric oxygen, but hyperbaric oxygen isn't accessible. It's expensive. Like I'm just gonna, call a spade a spade.
Exactly. Yes, and sauna has become a lot cheaper too. And a lot of places like where we live here in Asheville, we have a great like a sauna house where people can go, the public can go and then use the sauna and they can do cold plunge, which I love that. It's way accessible. And like you said, the price point is a lot lower. And we'll talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, about what that is. And when, just as a backtrack here, what was like your like aha moment or like game changer when it really came to biohacking, when you started, if that makes sense? Like what did you see in yourself shift that was really like, this is where I want to really be putting my time and energy into myself and also helping others?
Yeah, so from the loss of my mother, I had extremely bad PTSD, and it manifested into schizophrenia,
Mm,
paranoia, anxiety, OCD, panic attacks, suicidal ideations, self-harm. I had the whole spectrum
mm,
of what you would get if something like that had happened to you. This is a
right.
thing, like this is the norm. I'm not like the odd one out who experiences that spectrum when someone in the direct bloodline does that. So when I was finally coming out of the fog of all of that, I realized I really need to focus on my health. And I awakened I just became more awakened in my life. And I just kind of realized that there's more to life. And biohacking seemed to be that golden triage of it helps me, it helps others, and I can benefit from it as well in terms of I can build something within the space.
Right.
When I build something, it helps me and it helps others. So it's like this golden triage. And then also on top of that, the community is just so nice. Like
Yes.
everyone in the community is just so nice. I really
Yeah.
mean that. Like the community welcomed me with open arms, and I'll be forever grateful. And you find friends, and then you through biohacking, I had the epiphany that, oh, I can show people how to biohack their PTSD after they've lost someone to suicide. And
Mm,
oh, I can like, because it's relatively new. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Biohacking is basically a starter. Like the industry is a starter. So when you're involved in the startup industry and the startup community, you realize, oh, there's so many things I can do.
Yes, and I really like what you said there, that it is new, and also the piece where about addressing PTSD and grief and loss, which you're working with, that is not an area that's touched, so to speak. Really helping people on that emotional layer, which is so needed. I think and we're even seeing that in just like in the mental health field in general. I think we're coming into this new phase where people didn't even feel comfortable talking about
Yeah.
it. Like, that's okay, we're going to put you on that box on the shelf and just deal with it on your own. And then when you come out of it, we'll just see how you are on the other side.
Yeah. The mental health industry is a scam.
Yeah.
It's fraudulent.
Yeah. It's really heartbreaking, especially when it's so needed. And I think that especially after, during and after, as we're moving through the pandemic, we're seeing so many people affected by stress and anxiety, because especially myself as a physician, I saw so many of my patients that had that underlying current of anxiety and stress, catapult them into this next level, and looking and searching for techniques and tools and tips to really help them to deal with the stress. And of course, I have them in my toolbox. But when I look at the general view of the others around me, I can see that they're like scrambling, like for a loss of what to use.
I think it's like there's misinformation. So there's like a width of knowledge, but there's no wealth to the knowledge out there. So there's a huge misinformation going on. On top of that, you have Google, which basically fact checks,
Right.
fact checks everything into like oblivion. So you just end up with like Healthline and a few other websites which are highly regulated. When you
Right.
read from Healthline, you're basically reading from the CDC.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they're basically the same. Like people don't understand. Like health media is all owned by the same, just like mainstream media, right?
Exactly.
It's owned
And
by 7 companies. Like health media is the same.
that big pharma, like you mentioned earlier, having that be the controlling agent. And when it comes to mental health pharmaceuticals, they're horrible. I see my patients
Yeah.
trying to come off of an SSRI or an antidepressant. It's really challenging. And a lot of times it'll make them feel way worse. I work a lot with patients, like, how can we help them to come off that a way that elevates them, where they're feeling better than they've ever felt before?
Yeah. I've seen that firsthand. My mum was on 18 different medications a
Oh my
day.
gosh, 18.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the list on my laptop. I have like document file folder on my laptop. She was on 18. They were all very high doses. And I went to the doctor's office with her one time as a guardian. And I said to the doctor, she's been feeling like XYZ. Symptoms are ABC. What's the next step? And the doctor, she was a lovely lady, probably a bit out of her depth, like every GP is in the UK because they have 2 minutes to see every patient. It's like a revolving door.
Right.
She could do nothing but just increase the prescription.
Mm,
So that's what happened.
yeah. I'm so sorry for that.
Oh,
And
it's okay.
yeah, it's a tragedy. That's the piece. And I see, and it's so common. And let's talk about, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the show today too. And so when we're looking at biohacking techniques and tools to really help with PTSD and grief and loss, can we talk about the hyperbaric oxygen therapy that you mentioned earlier? Because I
Yeah.
love this tool, and I think I know that you're an expert in it, and a lot of people don't know about it. I think we have one place where I live that you can go. And I think that I'd love for you to talk about it. Like, how does it really help with, first of all, what is it? Let's start there.
Yeah. Hyperbaric oxygen. Hyper means increased. Baric means pressure. So it's increased pressure oxygen. And there is a pressure vessel, which is basically like this big long metal tube the size of a single bed. And when an individual enters the pressure vessel, the pressure is increased, and this is what leads to hyperbaric oxygen. And you
Mm.
breathe in 100% oxygen through an oxygen mask, nasal cannula. So in our everyday lives, we breathe 21% oxygen at 1 ATA.
That's a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. And
Huge difference.
in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, it's 100% oxygen at 2 ATA. Okay, and this leads to the blood plasma, cerebrospinal fluid, and lymph having an oxygen concentration increase of 1,200%.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, and this huge increase is the key cornerstone mechanism to all of hyperbaric oxygen's synergistic healing and regenerative effects.
So when we're talking about using oxygen at that level, how does that work with an actual like cellular piece, like working with the DNA and helping with the actual organelles of the cell, like the mitochondria? How
Yeah,
does oxygen really help with that piece?
yeah. So in hyperbaric medicine land, your red blood cells are actually a limitation to your health. So by the age of 35, everybody on the planet will have thousands of microcapillary damages, occlusions, and hindrance. And the red blood cells, because of their size, because of their oval concave disc size, they cannot fit past these occlusions. So what this means is that a road is blocked. And what's at the end of the road? Cells, tissues, and organs. And the cells, tissues, and organs at the end of the road end up being in pockets of oxygen deprivation, and you end up with pockets of hypoxia. Dr. Otto Warburg won the Nobel Prize in 1931 for stating that the number one cause of all degenerative disease is oxygen deprivation at the cellular level, which is hypoxia. So this is what hyperbaric oxygen eradicates. Now, this is just on the kind of macroscopic cellular level. If we're to look at the microscopic kind of environment that's going on, the oxygen, the megadose of supraphysiological oxygen mediated by the blood plasma, because remember, we've overcome the limitation of the red blood cells, feeds the mitochondria and also changes the epigenetic status of the cell. Yeah, so it's like it's a huge topic. Huge.
Oh, huge. Yeah.
I'm writing a book, actually.
Oh, that's great. We'll have to have you back on for that for sure.
It's my secret, but yeah,
we
I'm
won't tell
writing my book
anybody.
about this.
Yeah, I love that explanation, Jessica, because I think,
Did it make sense?
Yeah, oh, totally. Of course,
Yeah.
to me. And I think you explained it really well to the listeners too. They'll really understand that, because I think people don't understand the power of oxygen and how important it is for every cell in our being. And that's why one reason why I really love oxygen therapy, but also meditation, is because when you're in that meditative state, you're really, how I do it and how I work with my patients is the breathing technique, to really helping your body to have this increase in oxygen at that level of calm and peace, where the nervous system is then in that different shift. And when you're in the hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber, you're also in that same nervous system state, in that parasympathetic state, in that resting and digesting.
That's a very good point. Yeah, you are. Yeah, a lot of people, you can take your phone and laptop. It depends. Obviously, they have hospital grade hyperbaric oxygen chambers, which go to 2.5 ATA, and you're not allowed to take your phone and stuff like that in there. But the clinic, because you like blow up.
Right. Yeah, not a good plan.
Yeah, no, like it's not like but if you went into all the clinics I know, so I know clinics globally can take your phone and stuff in there. So
tuning out, as you should be, maybe.
You should take the time to tune out.
Yeah.
Like, you don't really need your phone in there. You can bring a book and go to sleep and meditate, or listen to a podcast.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think that that's a piece where we're seeing, one is like the technology that we're seeing, the tools that are helping us increase our and optimize our health, but we're also seeing the hindrance at the same time as like the technology, with needing to have blue light blockers and things where our brain doesn't have the time to turn off. And does the HBOT, what does that session look like? Is it you're in there for, what's the time period? Do you need to have several sessions to achieve a specific result from those sessions?
Yeah. So hyperbaric oxygen must be front loaded. So it's like an MOT. Okay. It's like an MOT you take once every 1 to 2 years, every 6 months if you really want. And you must do at least 10 sessions to move the needle. 10 1-hour sessions. Maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe 40.
Wow. Yeah.
It's up to you. Yeah. But like all the clinical trials are around 40 sessions.
40 sessions.
So this is extremely important.
And is there a measurable aspect testing that can be done on the forefront and through sessions and then post session, like a lab test that measures a change in red blood cells or change in oxygen saturation? Is there something that's doing the testing that was done in those clinical trials, or you're seeing at Wellness Lab?
The clinical trials are extremely robust. Yeah, they're not just like a woo pseudoscience clinical trial. Yeah, like they have a control group and they've been done in like hospitals. Yeah, there's three key thought leaders within the hyperbaric oxygen space. There's Professor Shia Frati, who has Aviv clinics, and he's probably up there with the front runner of coming out with the clinical trials. Then there's Dr. Scott Shea, and then there's Dr. Paul Hart, and there's also Dr. Jason Saunders. So there's a few people, but it's not just you go in and people are coming out and saying, "Oh, I feel better," and then that's written down. It is being like thoroughly documented.
That's great. And is there testing that you have seen, like lab testing, where you can see? I'm just trying to see what the quantitative like aspect of is it, where you're testing to see the actual shift in the body.
Yeah, so Dr. Shia Frati, he has seen telomeres increase by up to 38%,
That's amazing.
and also a clearance of senescent zombie cells by 28%. So I've seen clinical evidence, like I've been shadowing Dr. Robert Pender. He's got a PhD in hyperbaric medicine. So this is what I did in London for a while. So I was shadowing him and we saw amazing results. And we did have clients who had their own blood work done before and after, and they saw incredible results.
That's great. And you mentioned the word telomere, and I'd love for you to just explain that for those listeners that don't know what that is, because it's a super
Yeah.
important part about longevity, the DNA, all of that together.
So we have chromosomes, and you can view these chromosomes like a shoelace.
Mm,
And we have telomeres, which are protective caps on the top of the chromosome. And you can view the telomeres like the plastic protective caps on the end of the shoelace, which stops the shoelace from unwinding. So that's the analogy there. When you get older, just like if you were to keep the pair of shoes, the plastic protective cap is going to wear away and wear away. And when it wears away, the chromosomes begin to unravel, just like the shoelace would unravel. And when the chromosome unravels, the DNA cannot be transcripted properly. You get incorrect protein folding and all of these sorts of things, and you get disease. So
right.
when you have a therapy such as hyperbaric oxygen, which can re-lengthen your telomeres by up to 38%, you are basically stopping disease right at the baseline level.
Love that. I just thank you. That was a great explanation and analogy of the shoelaces. Perfect. And I think that people don't understand the importance of actual like helping lengthen telomeres, what we can actually do, what supplements, therapies can help lengthen that. And that I think we'll see over time as people are shifting and we're seeing more testing ability to see actual that the testing of the specific telomeres. But when we can see the change in the longevity of actual people using the therapies, that's what I'm trying to get to. We'll be seeing that change in our civilization, in the world, and the planet. Hopefully, that's where we'll move to.
Yeah. Yeah, hyperbaric oxygen is awesome. It's becoming more accessible, more and more accessible. I'm really thankful. There's no
Mm-hmm.
other modality which can do something like hyperbaric oxygen, actually.
And do you know about ozone therapy in comparison to
I
hyperbaric
do.
oxygen therapy? Can you explain the difference between those two things?
Yeah, so ozone is there's a few different types of ways that ozone can be administered. Fundamentally, ozone is the addition of O3 into reactive O3 into the body. And then when the reactive O3 enters the body, it breaks up into O2, which doesn't have anything to do with the mechanism. But the reactive O, free O, becomes a free radical and travels around the body and it kills all the bacteria and viruses. Ozone is more of a detoxification agent. This hyperbaric oxygen is more regenerative and healing. Hyperbaric does do detoxification because anytime you change the environment of the body to become more aerobic, you're going to get all the nasty anaerobic pathogens dying off. But They're completely different mechanisms. Yeah. I love both. I've had ozone. I had hemo-auto-patantic ozone, whatever you want to call it, where like they took my blood, they took like 160 milliliters of my blood, and they put it into a bag, injected it with ozone, and then I had it re-dripped back into me.
Like an IV therapy style.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
You can breathe it in. You can also have like rectal ozone and like ozone oil. You can get ozone water now as well.
Yeah, we're really
So
seeing that shift with because it really helps with the free radicals and the antioxidants in the cell, which we're seeing how much that really impacts the DNA. And thank you for explaining those too, because I think they're different. But I think people need to know that it has the oxygen and the ozone in kind of like the word. And so I think people can get confused with exactly what's going on there.
yeah, ozone's cool. Oxygen's cooler.
Totally. I think there's one clinic in Florida that's really coming of popularity and surgeons that's doing a lot of ozone therapy. And we don't have anyone here that I know of in where I live, but it's because it's not as common. It's much more, I don't know, more not scientific, but you have to have the machinery and the technology at the clinic.
Yeah, ozone's good for like Candida, Lyme, all of these things.
Yeah, very good for autoimmune disease and Lyme disease.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
really
like
good.
it's really good. But autoimmune, I don't like. Autoimmune is just the accumulation of a bad lifestyle.
Yeah, and the trauma piece, which we're going to talk about
It's a
that too.
choice.
Yeah,
Autoimmune.
exactly.
If you've acquired an autoimmune disease, like you weren't born like that. No,
Exactly.
come
Yes.
on. Like it's a choice. Like you made
Right.
that choice because you had bad lifestyle choices, and now your body is self-cannibalizing because it can't understand what's good and bad anymore.
It's lost its technology
You've
within
like
its
pushed
cells.
the button too much, and now it's just like bugging. And
Yeah, the
so
communication breakdown. Like
yeah,
when
there's
the
been a
message,
yeah.
yeah, message over and over
So
again, the bad loop of health.
yeah,
Totally.
so autoimmune is a slippery slope. You don't wake up with an autoimmune disease, just like you don't wake up with diabetes or heart disease or obesity. You don't wake up with
Right.
these things.
Exactly. Yeah. And our body is sending messages so many times when we're all of those specific diseases that you mentioned. And I think people have really tuned out about what their body is communicating. Like just even the simple things, like you mentioned earlier in the beginning, about the foundations, about exercise and nutrition, like craving exercise or craving hydration, craving good food. Our body is just like, it's so far beyond when we have that autoimmune disease come in. Those messages are just lost in the sea. And so we have to clear out all the muck to be able to really listen. Yeah, this is what I really need. Clearly.
Yeah. I also think there's been a huge normalization of illness.
Oh, yeah.
So the slope is becoming like more and more, you know,
Diluted,
degraded. Yeah, like
degraded.
the range of illness is just growing and growing. So you would have started off here, now people are starting off here. So it's
Yeah. Yeah, so true. We've seen such a change in even autoimmune
yeah.
diseases, like you mentioned. I'm just so surprised in my own practice how I see women, especially women, at such a younger age with autoimmune disease, and they're not. I'm just surprised that the shift is
Mm,
happening. I think it's happening at a much quicker rate than people are realizing because it's being watered down, diluted, degraded in a way, just like you said, like this set point is starting at a lot different
yeah,
place. Yeah. And we need to
yeah.
change that for sure. Like health should be the
And
set
there's
point.
yeah, there's also generational toxicity. So as a human race, the genetic code isn't getting any better over time,
Right.
actually.
Yeah.
So like your mum might have missed the bullet in terms of her autoimmune disease, but she was pregnant with you and you've got those bad genetics. And now you're almost 3 to 4 times more likely to develop an autoimmune disease, even if you have better lifestyle habits than your mum, just because of that generational toxicity. Like autism's 1 in 40 now in the US.
It's
That just goes to
crazy.
show like what is going on.
Right. Yes. What is going on in our brains for sure. And we're not even using our total capacity, much less seeing the backtracking of the ability to use the brain and cognitive impairment. We're seeing more resurgence of dementia and Alzheimer's and all the different aspects of brain disease, especially when it comes to brain function. And when we were talking about the hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment, how does that work with helping with brain function, cognitive impairment? Have you seen a shift in that in the clinic?
Yeah, I have. So from my clinical experience, I've seen multiple children with autism come in and use the hyperbaric oxygen. And I have video testimonials from parents who say, wow, can't believe it. He's
Mm,
using the toilet on his own. I'm
mm,
getting reports from school that he's able to color within the lines, and continuation of this kind of statement. And this comes from the hyperbaric oxygen,
mm,
multiple things for the brain. But if we use autism as a case study, it reduces neuroinflammation, it improves the mitochondria, and it reduces the oxidative stress. It does a number of things. So nerves on the whole require a huge amount of stem cell mobilization, cellular energy requirements,
mm.
oxygen demand, immune system. Like nerves require this on the whole, especially neurons. So when you give the brain, when you take an individual who the number one thing that the body needs to do in that individual is to repair the brain, and you
Mm,
put them in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, this is what the body will do. Hyperbaric oxygen is synergistic. And what I mean by that is that our body has an innate prioritization list of what needs to be done. So when you give the body more energy, which comes from the more oxygen, the body is able to repair and tick off the priority list. But when we live in these concrete jungles, surrounded by 18,000 man made chemicals, stress, EMF,
mhm.
bad food, bad relationships, drama all the time,
Mm,
the priority list starts to go down and down and down because we just need to survive.
right. Yeah.
So when you go into the chamber, especially when you have like autism or you have PTSD, I used it for my PTSD. Yeah, neurogenesis, synaptogenesis, regrowing of the myelin sheath, brain hemispheres being reconnected, reducing oxygen. You see a lot of things going on. So it's very good for the brain. There's been Dr. Paul Hart, there was a case study. There was a 4-year-old child. She drowned and she was in a coma.
Oh, wow.
And the brain, yeah, the brain was, there was like a 1% chance that she was like going to ever open her eyes again. Something like this, real dramatic, horrible story. And the parents didn't know what to do. And the doctors didn't know what to do. And someone said, oh, you should try Paul Hart hyperbaric oxygen. So on the last resort, they tried, and she's fine. She's a normal girl now.
Wow.
And this has been, yeah, and this is repeated like over and over.
That's amazing.
So
Yeah, the brain is so amazing when it comes to the ability to regenerate when we give it the right tools. It so needs oxygen, right? I think we have our nasal passages and our mouth that's really getting oxygen to the brain quickly, but it has to go through a process. And so when we're
yeah,
using the body as a way to increase oxygen, I think people can see. I'd love for there to be an experiment that would be done about comparing oxygen therapy to actual like cognitive function. What's the improvement of memory with the use of
yeah.
oxygen therapy?
Shia Frati did this.
Of course.
Yeah, I've read that paper like multiple times. It was a success. I don't know like
Mhm.
the exact statistics from the top of my head. It was a success. Like Professor Shia Frati, he charges like mega bucks, and you go there and it's like a stay in hospital
Mm,
experience where there's a huge waiting list, and you go there for 2 months and you do 40 sessions, and they take
mm.
all it's for he does research, but basically like his clinic is for like billionaires and multimillionaires who want to reverse everything.
Yes, let's have the whole planet be able to do that. That's what we want the
Yeah,
technology to be able to do, which is great.
it's relatively expensive. It's like the price of a holiday.
An expensive
I get
holiday.
it could be compared to like if you wanted to put it like that, maybe like
Yes.
it costs around like $2,500. So it's like you could go and you maybe you and your like husband or family or whatever couldn't for the listeners, you might not go on holiday that year, but then you've repaired your,
which is very
so
important.
that's how I'm trying to frame that. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we only have one body. At this point in
Exactly.
time, in 2022, we
Exactly.
only have one body that we can use
You
as
can't
our
enjoy the whole if you're out of it.
you don't have, and your brain function is highly important. So when we're talking about brain, let's shift our conversation to the piece about tragedy and trauma, which I know you've talked a little bit about. How, so you use some of the biohacking techniques specifically for PTSD. How did it help you to like process tragedy from that tragedy piece that you had with your mother, basically like at that own trauma? How did it help? Did it help you to see things more clearly, or did it help you to have more tools to be able to reduce some of all the explanations you talked about earlier, all the symptoms you were having from the PTSD?
Yeah. So for the first like year and a half, I was numb. I couldn't even, like a tear couldn't even fall from my eye. And when someone would ask me about it, I'd say, oh, I'm fine, I'm over it. It just happened. It was a thing, like this. And then I just on the foreground. And then I went to Costa Rica for 6 weeks on a self exploration journey. I guess you could call it cliche, but true. And Costa Rica is like really healing. And when I returned back to the UK, that's when I started experiencing all of the paranoia and that range of emotions and thoughts. And then it got really bad. I wasn't really telling anyone. And then only March last year did I really start to take the reins on what I was going through. And I reached out and I told my family, and we got therapy and stuff like this. And I think talk therapy and those things, it can only take you so far. And it's more of a, you can do talk therapy. So I'm not into medication. So I was never going to take an SSRI and any of
Right.
those things. Like I don't subscribe to that, and
Me
I never
either.
will. Like that is not me.
Yeah.
I believe in myself, and I don't believe that taking anything is gonna change what I can do.
Exactly.
Like I with the biohacking and PTSD, it's more like, so you can be in like talk therapy for 5 years, and it's basically like spinning webs. It can just be like spinning webs, right? It's talking spinning webs. Now, when you incorporate psychedelics in a controlled environment, biohacking, a community, friends, family, love, meditation, you like 100x what you could achieve just from that talk therapy, right? So that's how I
Right.
kind of do things, as like a kind of, it's more of like a 360 approach. Just if I was just doing biohacking and I wasn't doing talk therapy, it's all hand in hand. It's got to be this like macroscopic kind of view. And also, I think when you begin to understand that, oh, the thought that I'm feeling today, it stems from the prefrontal cortex, but my prefrontal cortex was damaged because of what happened to me, but in the most non-victim way, just as
Right.
a outward statement, you begin to separate yourself from that thought, and it makes you feel not so helpless. So this is also what is good about educating and education within the biohacking world. So I think it's like a few different things.
Yeah, I like that piece that you just talked about, the awareness, like bringing it to the front of your brain, so to speak, right? Where it's not hiding in the background. And when you bring it to our awareness, we're able to then acknowledge it, have the receptivity to receive the healing. And I also liked how you described basically a holistic model, right? It's not just one piece where you're just getting talk therapy, but you're really reaching out into all of those pieces. Okay, I'm going to use this piece and this piece to magnify my healing in a way that wouldn't have been possible. And that's what I really like about what you have done to your story, and like shifting yourself with the awareness piece and what you said too, it's so important about not wanting to use something like a pharmaceutical to shift, to suppress your body's ability to heal, those emotions that need to surface and heal. And that's what pharmaceuticals do. In some circumstance, they can be helpful for an emergent situation. That's where I can see them like, okay, yeah, if you broke your arm off, maybe you need to have a painkiller in that moment to help you with the surgery in that circumstance. But when we're just helping someone to suppress an emotion like anxiety, depression, worry, all those pieces, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It doesn't help us to really see the whole picture, the whole story of our healing.
Yeah, it's not even like those, I think like SSRIs, like it's come out very recently that it was all a sham,
Mm,
right? That is not like the anomaly.
yeah.
All of these things are hijacked basically because more people, everyone on earth goes through some sort of bad experience. Everyone goes through the mill, right? So
Mm.
if Big Pharma can even find 0.1% of the Earth's population and sell them these drugs, then they're in business.
Unfortunately, they're capping on those people having problems, which are trauma. Do you think that when it comes to trauma and healing and tragedy, do you think that's a necessary piece in our road of healing? Like for us to actual as humans to move to that highest potential, do you think that maybe there's different levels for everyone? For you, for instance, you had this extreme trauma and tragedy, but it has catapulted you into where you are now.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't wish like anyone to have
Right.
anything bad
Yes,
happen to
no.
them.
No, exactly.
Like if something bad does happen to you, then you know it it's just the way it is. You kind of have to. What else are you gonna do? And if you like learn to be the alchemist and to transmute the
Mm.
pain that you feel in whichever way. Like I could have found a love for like dog sitting. Yeah, I could be like, and I could be dog sitting other people who've lost
Right.
someone to suicide. Like I could be bonding over that. I could make a dog sitting thing where if you lost someone to suicide and so have I, let's meet up with our dogs. There's an
Yes.
endless opportunity and possibility, but only when you take responsibility. And I think
Mm.
this is what the SSRIs, they all stop you from really taking responsibility and feeling what is human consciousness without feeling. And sometimes it
Yes.
might feel empty and sometimes it might not. And this is just the ebb and flow.
Hmm. Yes. And I think that responsibility piece is like the key for shifting from our disease model that we're currently in into one of prevention and wellness, taking responsibility for your own health, right? Not just going to the particular physician that is currently the current health model, not like an alternative health practitioner, but where you're getting a prescription where you've just a quick fix, like you mentioned earlier, that band-aid, right? The band-aid is not working for us anymore. It's really has
So
failed.
I will quiz you this, okay? Everybody who is in a mental asylum, who is in a hospital where they've locked the doors because these people are too mentally ill. My mum was in there.
Mm.
All of these people are on medication. The success rate is extremely low.
Yeah, it's like zilch.
So why would you think these things work
Right.
when the proof is in the pudding? But if you look at the success rate of people who deny the medication, the success rate is extremely high.
Right. Where they're taking priority of their own health and saying, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to search for a different method. And that's the alternative healthcare piece in general. I'm going to look
Mm-hmm.
for something else. And I don't like the word alternative, but it's just what's out there. But it's like they're looking
Yeah.
for something else that instead that's out of the norm, because our norm is so messed up when it comes to health, that we have to have the different solution. And when you,
Yeah.
what do you think? I'm sorry, go ahead.
We are just the anti-industry. There's industry science and there's non-industry science. And
Mm,
I'm not saying you've lost a leg, something's foul on you, you need to go to the hospital, you need to
right.
have life-changing, you need to have life-altering surgery. That's fine. But all I'm saying is if you're like depressed or you feel suicidal, like why would you take an SSRI or take these like psychotic drugs?
There's alternatives out there, and if you're listening and you're tuning in and you're looking for alternatives, know that they are out there, and we are here to help you. And if you but there's
Yeah, we
also,
are.
yeah,
But
a
a spade is a
suicide
spade, right?
hotline. Yes. If you're really suffering, and you're having suicidal tendencies, please reach out to someone immediately. Don't just sit back and not do something, not be proactive. I think that's important to say too. There
Of
is help out
course.
there. And what do you see for the healthcare model? What's your vision? And we're going to look 5 years out. What do you see if in your dream
Hmm.
world, what would you see would be happening in 5 years out for wellness, prevention, sustainability?
It's a good question. I think there needs to be a restructuring of the current ideologies which are being fed right now to society. I think when if you control the language and you control the philosophy and you control the ideas, this is where action stems from. So if the philosophy is that obesity is fine, then people are going to be obese and feel fine about it.
Right.
So I really think there needs to be a great restructuring in
Hmm.
in the philosophy. Also, I want to say things need to be more regulated, but then I don't. I saw an advertisement the other day that seed oils are heart healthy. Seed oils give you sclerosis. So there is, I don't know whether the companies mean it. I don't know whether it's vicious in intent. You just don't know these days.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know, I can't say in a dreamland, it would be really nice for everyone to be happy and healthy and whole and no one to be ill and sick, but humanity just doesn't operate like that. So all that we can do is try and touch and help and find our community and help our community live the best way they possibly can.
So true. Yes, I think that having that intention is really important. Having the
Yeah.
intention about holding the space for the shift and the change in our healthcare in a new, because we mentioned today that there a lot of pieces of it are not working, but we're seeing that technology and knowledge, and that's the piece I really appreciated you mentioning, is that knowledge piece. Knowledge is power. And when we know that we have the solutions and the tools to shift our healthcare, we can make it happen as a community, as a global unit, right, on the planet.
So when was the dot com was like 2008, right?
Yeah, 2008 is when it really started to increase at this high level.
So we've only really seen 14 years of online health
It
guru.
hasn't even been 20 years yet.
Yeah. So really we've only seen 14 years of anti-industry health and wellness. So personally, I think mainstream media and the health, the pharmaceutical industry, I feel like they are losing control.
Yeah. Which
If I had to say, I'd think the environment is slowly flipping, actually. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 20 years. But then
yeah.
there's going to be a rise of honey pots where like big pharmaceutical basically spokespeople are pretending to be health gurus, telling you there's going to be some
Mm-hmm.
like Agent Smith. There probably already is.
Like the Men in Black, like some
Yeah, like
like
there probably
secret,
already is
right?
some
Secret
people
agents,
like in the industry, and obviously they have like billions of dollars of capital allocation. So I don't
right?
really know. I just think, yeah, it's good. It's too intricate.
I know it's a interesting vision for us to create, right? What do we want I'm always thinking about that when it comes to healthcare. What would I like it to be, or what would I envision it to be in the next 5 years for myself and for the planet? It's so interesting. And as we're wrapping up today, Jessica, I have one more question at the end, but I'd love for you to talk about how people can find you and follow you and learn about all the amazing things that you have coming up in the
Yeah,
future.
you can just go to my Instagram, jessica.alana.s. You can
Great.
just DM me there. I'd love to talk to you guys. I'm like building out everything as we speak. So you
Yay.
can be like my journey on my journey with me. Yeah.
I love
So
that.
so yeah.
Yeah, and we'll post that in the show notes for everyone. So it'll be really easy to find you, Jessica, and follow you. I
Thank you
love,
so much,
yeah.
Dr. Lulu.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. I love your Instagram. It's fun to see all the different things that you're doing in the world and how you're wanting to make a difference, which I think is so important.
You too.
Yeah, thank you. And one last fun question as we're wrapping up. If you had an unlimited budget right now, what would you do to make the biggest impact on the planet? I know we talked about this with our last question, but this is a little different.
So I would open one I would open like a huge clinic, right?
Mm.
And then I'd have like satellites in all of the big cities. And then I would just put 1 billion into like marketing. And then I would just and then I would fly autistic children or people with really bad dementia like to the King Clinic and help them and stuff. I don't know, I
Mm.
think it would be interesting. But then at the same time, I'd also want to run some clinical trials, I guess. I'd probably want to work with Elon Musk.
Okay, well,
I'd
that
say
out there
like,
for you.
yeah. I'd be
Yeah,
like, I have 100 billion to do something in healthcare. Can we make a company? And he'd be
right.
like, yeah, sure.
Yes, sure. Exactly. Yes. Yeah, we will grant you that one. Ding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question that I find that most of my guests have a very similar answer when it comes to healthcare. It's like they want to have clinics to help people from the healthcare model.
Mm.
There's a lot of different answers, but helping children always is a very common theme too, like helping with food and nutrition and those pieces which we can see are missing. And so thank you. I love that answer. That was great.
Yeah, we can do like a SpaceX health
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica, for joining us
You're
today. I
welcome.
loved our conversation and I
Me
can't
too.
wait to share it with the world.
Bye, Dr. Lulu. Love you so much.
You too.